For 165 years, Rhode Island's law books have carried the state's 1861 ratification of the Corwin Amendment, a proposed constitutional amendment that, had it ever been adopted, would have made slavery permanent and put it beyond the reach of Congress.
Yeah, it is an incredibly sobering piece of history. And it's just, sitting there in the physical text of the state's statutes.
Right. Welcome to the 10th, your nonpartisan Sunday morning briefing on what state legislatures and Congress actually did this week.
Exactly. We're here to look at the week that was, the week that's coming.
Yeah, if you want to be informed before your week even starts, you are in the right place. And as a quick reminder, you can follow along with every piece of legislation, every vote we discuss today by visiting amendment.app.
So this week, the laboratories of democracy spent their time in the fine print.
The fine print?
Right. And when we talk about the fine print, we are talking about that part nobody reads until they're the one it falls on. It's the surcharge line at the very bottom of a receipt, or the as-is clause on a used car, a coverage exclusion buried deep in an insurance plan.
Oh, absolutely.
And as we just heard, a sentence about slavery that has sat untouched in the law books for 165 years.
Let's start right at the checkout counter, actually, because that is where most of this week's fine print lives. It's something every single listener deals with daily.
Oh, yeah.
So Governor Jeff Landry is currently looking at Louisiana Senate Bill 254. And this bill bans merchants from tacking a surcharge onto your purchase just because you decided to pay with a debit card.
Right.
And it just cleared the legislature this week. The margins here they're really striking. The Senate passed it 36-0 and the House passed it 83-14.
Yeah, what is particularly interesting about this Louisiana bill isn't just that overwhelming bipartisan support. It's the enforcement mechanism.
Okay, how so?
Well, it relies on something called a private right of action.
Which is fascinating because, if you are standing at the register and a store tax on a prohibited $3 fee.
Right. The state attorney general isn't going to swoop in to save you.
Exactly. A state agency simply doesn't have the bandwidth for $3 violations. So a private right of action basically means you, the shopper, bypass the state bureaucracy entirely.
Yep.
You hold the power to sue directly for actual damages, assuming, they ignore your written notice to fix it.
Precisely. It decentralizes the enforcement. It puts the power to police the fine print directly into the hands of the consumer holding the receipt.
Instead of waiting on, an underfunded regulator to investigate a massive backlog of complaints.
Right. Now, think about the last time you bought a vehicle, because we are seeing a similar push for recourse in New Jersey, but on a much larger purchase.
Ah, right. New Jersey Assembly Bill 1310.
Yeah. This goes right after the used car lot. Right now, if you buy a used car, as is in New Jersey, and, the transmission drops out onto the highway 3 blocks away.
That's entirely your problem.
Exactly. The fine print says you bought it with all its faults. But this bill curbs those no warranty sales.
Because an as-is clause effectively acts as a shield against basic consumer expectations.
Right. By curbing those sales, this legislation shifts the burden of that initial baseline functionality back to the seller. It ensures that when you drive off the lot, the vehicle actually operates as a vehicle.
Makes sense. And, this fine print isn't just at the dealership. It's waiting for you in the school cafeteria.
Yeah, that was a surprising one.
Right. Rhode Island Senate Bill 2635 bans per-transaction processing fees on school lunch payments in every district. It mandates that each district must offer at least one no-fee way to load money onto a child's account.
And the Rhode Island Senate Education Committee just took this up because basically parents were experiencing the indignity of being taxed just to put lunch money into their kids' account.
Yeah, and we are seeing similar structural protections moving around essential food assistance as well. Look at New York.
Right, the SNAP bill.
Yeah. There is a bill advancing that would require chip-enabled checkout for SNAP, which is the Supplemental Food Assistance Benefit. And this is entirely a response to the fine print of payment security.
Because fraudsters have been aggressively using card skimmers, right? Just draining benefits right off the old magnetic stripe cards.
The mechanism of those skimmers is just brutal. I mean, a magnetic stripe is basically static, unencrypted data.
It never changes.
Exactly. When you swipe it, a skimming device attached to a bodega register can copy that exact data instantly. But a chip creates a unique one-time transaction code that can't be reused.
Which is why credit cards have carried chip-enabled fraud protection for a decade.
Right. But government-issued SNP cards are just now catching up, and the urgency is huge because the federal program that used to reimburse those stolen benefits, it expired last December.
Right.
It's devastating for families who get to the checkout line only to find their monthly food budget was stolen by, like, a piece of plastic wired to the card reader.
It really is devastating. And to your point about the decade-long delay, credit card companies had a massive financial incentive to upgrade their security. The government did not feel that same urgency until the fraud reached a breaking point.
But looking at all of these, debit cards, used cars, school lunches, SNAP, is this just state legislatures playing whack-a-mole?
How do you mean?
It just feels like we are fixing one specific receipt at a time without addressing the root cause,
It definitely looks piecemeal if you only look at one state. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see a very clear pattern of Justice Louis Brandeis's concept of the laboratories of democracy.
Right.
Remember earlier this spring, Maryland passed a ban on surveillance pricing. That's the practice of charging two different shoppers different prices for the exact same item, all based on their personal data profile.
Right.
What starts as a specific state-by-state patchwork eventually builds up a critical mass. When enough individual states lay down these rules, the compliance burden on national companies becomes so complicated that it builds massive pressure for a single national rule.
And we are already seeing this in Washington.
Yes. A federal version called the One Fair Price Act has recently been introduced.
Keep the frame in mind. This was a week spent in the fine print, and we're moving from the receipt to the insurance plan, where the exclusions are. As we do, a quick reminder that you can find the exact wording and the current status of all these bills at amendment.app.
And insurance is the absolute classic domain of fine print. It is the architecture of coverage gaps that dictate what care you actually receive, regardless of what your doctor recommends.
Which brings us to Illinois House Bill 5284, the Menopause Equity and Care Act.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It really is. This legislation requires health plans to cover treatments for menopause and perimenopause. That includes hormonal and non-hormonal therapies, plus FDA-approved medications for osteoporosis and hot flashes.
And this bill carries 61 sponsors. It just cleared the Illinois legislature this week.
The impact of this is profound when you look at workforce retention and quality of life. Women have historically had to pay out of pocket or simply suffer through debilitating symptoms because insurance fine print classify these treatments as non-essential.
It's incredible. And Illinois didn't stop there either. Illinois Senate Bill 2762 closes an entirely different kind of coverage gap.
No, the seizure devices.
Right. This bill bars insurers from charging a copay or requiring prior authorization for medically prescribed seizure detection devices.
These are wearables, right?
Yeah, they monitor biometric data and literally wake a caregiver in the next room when someone with epilepsy has a seizure at night.
Wow. And we've all been there with prior authorization. It's that incredibly frustrating moment where your doctor says you need a specific treatment, but the insurance company demands you get their administrative permission slip first.
Right. It's a bureaucratic delay tactic. It exists to control costs for the insurer. But for a patient with epilepsy, a delay in receiving a seizure detection device can be a matter of life and death.
Yeah, definitely.
By legislatively removing that requirement, this bill strips away the fine print that stands between the patient and immediate monitoring. It passed the Illinois Senate with 36 sponsors from both parties, and it's now sitting in the House.
We're also seeing states tackle fine print that restricts the medical workforce itself.
Right. Looking at New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey Assembly Bill 3398 establishes provisional licensure for international medical graduates. We are talking about fully trained doctors who immigrated from overseas, who live in the U.S., but currently can't legally treat a single patient because they are trapped in state credentialing bottlenecks.
And the New Jersey Assembly Health Committee is hearing this one on Monday, which is deeply relevant given the projected national shortage of physicians and nurses. State legislatures are realizing they have to clear out the administrative fine print that keeps qualified professionals driving ride shares instead of working in clinics.
Wrapping up this healthcare cluster, New York Assembly Bill 2102 is a bipartisan bill banning vape products designed to appeal to anyone under 21.
The packaging rules.
Right, we're talking about the insidious packaging built to look exactly like a juice box, a piece of candy, or, a USB drive. The New York Assembly Health Committee took it up this week. But let me challenge you on something here.
Sure.
Healthcare always feels like this massive, sweeping federal issue. It dominates national debates. Why are we seeing so much highly specific, localized activity right now?
Well, it's because where Washington's equivalents are frozen in gridlock or simply absent entirely, the states are stepping in to write the specific coverage rules themselves.
Ah,
They aren't waiting for a grand federal overhaul of the healthcare system. They are going directly into the contracts and changing the specific clauses that dictate daily patient care and public health.
let's shift from the fine print of insurance contracts to the fine print of the criminal code. Because we're seeing states define modern harms that existing statutes just didn't quite reach.
Yeah, the technology gap.
Exactly. Take New Jersey Assembly Bill 4542. This bill makes it a fourth-degree crime to secretly plant an AirTag or a stalkerware app on a person to track where they go.
And the New Jersey Judiciary Committee hears it this Monday.
Honestly, listening to how you describe this gap between old laws and new tech, this feels less like writing new legislation and more like issuing a mandatory software patch for a completely outdated operating system.
That is exactly what it is. Older criminal statutes are often written broadly, right? They criminalize harassment or stalking in general terms, usually assuming the stalker is physically following someone.
Sure.
But the legal system requires incredibly precise definitions to secure a conviction. When a prosecutor tries to apply a 1990s stalking law to someone slipping a Bluetooth-enabled coin into a purse.
A defense attorney can just successfully argue the statute doesn't explicitly cover digital satellite tracking.
Exactly. By writing these highly specific updates, states are ensuring the technological mechanism of the crime is just as illegal as the intent behind it. It's formalizing the reality on the ground.
And we see a similar need for precision in Pennsylvania, House Bill 434, which would create an ebony alert.
Right.
This is a statewide missing persons alert system specifically designed for Black children and adults. The underlying issue here is a bureaucratic definition. Historically, when Black youth disappear, they are frequently and incorrectly classified in police systems as runaways rather than missing persons.
And once that runaway label is applied, the case doesn't trigger the urgency, the media push, or the AMBR alert resources that other missing persons cases receive.
Right. The Pennsylvania House Children and Youth Committee heard this bill this week to mandate a specialized response.
And over in Illinois, we are seeing the closure of a very dangerous administrative loophole. Illinois House Bill 4534 would make it reportable child abuse when an adult in a child's own home grooms them.
And crucially, it targets what is known as the pass the trash loophole.
Right.
For years, if a school employee was flagged for inappropriate behavior, the fine print of their union contract or administrative rules often allowed them to quietly resign before a formal finding was entered into their permanent record. Then, they simply get rehired one district over.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah. This bill closes that gap, ensuring the paper trail follows the threat. The Illinois Senate Education Committee took that up this week. Finally, in Oklahoma, House Bill 1155 would build an Amber-style alert for high-speed police pursuits.
And the mechanics of this are brilliant in their simplicity. It takes the existing emergency broadcast infrastructure, the one that pings your cell phone and lights up the digital highway signs for weather or missing children,
Right.
and applies it to an immediate, fast-moving physical threat. If you are driving directly into the path of a 100-mile-per-hour chase, your phone warns you in real time to safely pull over.
And the Oklahoma House Appropriations Committee considered it this week. That brings us perfectly to our next theme. If that last group was about patching old software, this next group is about writing rule books for entirely new machines.
Exactly. We are looking at rules being written for technologies that simply did not exist when current statutes were drafted. This is where we see Brandeis's laboratories of democracy operating at maximum capacity.
Testing it out.
Right. Individual states are testing rules on brand new paradigms to see what holds up.
Let's look at California Assembly Bill 2285, the Digital Financial Asset Banking Act. This is essentially a post-FTX crypto rulebook.
Yeah.
It would let traditional banks and credit unions hold and stake customers' crypto. It has already cleared 3 committee votes with unanimous support. 9-0, then 15-0, and then 15-0 again.
And for those who might not be deep into the cryptocurrency world, staking simply means locking up your digital coins on a blockchain network to help validate transactions, and in return, you earn a yield.
Right.
But the core rule this bill introduces is a strict mandate called one-to-one full reserve.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this. If the rule says 1-to-1 full reserve, meaning the bank just holds my crypto and can't lend a single coin of it out, how does the bank make any money?
Good question.
Doesn't this break the entire fundamental business model of banking, which relies on fractional reserves and lending deposits?
It absolutely breaks the traditional banking model, but that is entirely by design.
Really?
Yeah. What California is saying is that crypto custody is not traditional banking. FTX collapsed precisely because they treated customer deposits like a slush fund, lending them out and making risky bets.
Ah, I see.
Under this new rulebook, if you deposit 1 Gitcoin, the bank must hold 1 Bitcoin in a vault with your name on it. They make their money purely on custody fees and a cut of the staking yields, not on lending margins.
Wow.
Yeah, and the bill also caps those staking fees and requires mandatory disclosures, making it explicitly clear in the fine print that these digital holdings are not FDIC insured. California is positioning itself to be the first state to write a real, comprehensive post-FTX custody framework.
Meanwhile, Pennsylvania House Bill 2380 turns our attention to an entirely different kind of grid.
Yeah.
This is a bipartisan bill carrying 29 sponsors that would require utilities to procure 3,000 megawatts of grid-scale battery storage.
And the Pennsylvania House Energy Committee takes it up Monday. Grid-scale battery storage is a massive shift in how we handle electricity.
How so?
Well, the old rules for the power grid were based purely on real-time generation. If millions of people turned on their air conditioners at 5 p.m., the utility had to instantly fire up an expensive, often dirty peaking power plant to meet that exact second of demand.
But batteries change the math entirely. You can bank cheap, clean, renewable energy in the middle of the night when demand is rock bottom, hold it, and discharge it back into the grid at that 5 p.m. peak.
Yep.
These new rules force utilities to rewrite their procurement fine print to reflect a grid that now has to store its own power efficiently, rather than just burning fuel on demand.
It's fascinating to see state legislatures acting as the vanguard for these emerging technologies. But let's pivot from the newest machines back to the oldest fine print.
Right.
Because sometimes the most important work a legislature can do is finally checking the physical law books themselves to see what has been left behind.
Which brings us right back to the cold open of our show. Rhode Island House Resolution 7579 is a resolution to formally repeal the state's 1861 ratification of the Corwin Amendment.
Yeah.
And just to remind everyone, the Corwin Amendment was a proposed constitutional amendment that, had it been adopted nationally prior to the Civil War, would have shielded the institution of slavery from federal interference forever. Rhode Island ratified it in 1861 to try and stave off the war, and simply never rescinded that vote.
And this resolution, which carries 10 sponsors, formally repeals that ratification. It is striking a clause that has been a dead letter, practically speaking, since the 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
Yet it has remained printed on the physical books and active statute for 165 years.
Here's the aha moment for me. When you really think about the sheer mechanical inertia of state legislatures, how does this even happen? Why does it take a coordinated 10-sponsor resolution just to strike a 165-year-old completely obsolete clause?
Well, because laws do not self-clean.
Okay.
Unless a piece of legislation is written with a specific sunset clause that dictates when it expires, the legislative machine is designed exclusively to add. There is no auto-delete function in government.
That's a great point.
Once a bill or a ratification is entered into the record, it becomes a permanent part of the legal architecture. To remove a single word requires the exact same expenditure of political energy. Drafting, finding sponsors, holding committee hearings, conducting floor votes, as it does to create a brand new law.
It is a testament to how deeply embedded the fine print truly is. That mechanical inertia is incredibly powerful. We are also seeing efforts in the states to apply existing fine print to massive new areas of public spending.
Right. In Ohio.
Yeah. Governor Mike DeWine and the legislature are watching Ohio Senate Bill 443, known as the Take the Dough We Gotta Know Act, which tackles accountability for taxpayer money.
This is a bipartisan bill that forces private schools accepting taxpayer-funded EdChoice vouchers to follow the exact same accountability rules that public schools already do.
And we are talking about a staggering amount of money here. Ohio spent more than $1 billion on these vouchers last year. Under this bill, the state auditor would step in to review each participating private school's voucher funds every year.
Wow.
Furthermore, voucher students would have to sit for the same annual state exams, and a public report card would be generated to let families compare these private schools directly against their public counterparts.
So they're essentially taking the dense fine print of public school accountability, the testing rules, the financial audits, and extending it to cover private institutions simply because they are receiving public funds.
But it's important to remember that not every bill we track expands a protection, a benefit, or an audit.
Right.
North Carolina House Bill 1232 is a proposed state constitutional amendment defining human life as beginning at the moment of fertilization and protected through natural death.
And the mechanism required to pass a state constitutional amendment is an incredibly high hurdle compared to a standard bill.
Oh, absolutely.
To take effect, this proposal cannot simply pass by a slim majority. It would require a 3/5 supermajority vote in each chamber of the North Carolina legislature. And even if it clears that massive hurdle, the legislature cannot enact it alone. It would then require majority approval from the voters directly at the ballot box.
It's a stark reminder of just how vastly different the priorities and legislative mechanisms can be from state to state, which leads us into what the public is actually focusing on right now.
Yeah, if we look at the public pressure signal this week via ResistBot, the most signed petitions were all pointing straight at Washington.
Interesting.
The public is highly focused on demanding Congress restore the Voting Rights Act following the Supreme Court's ruling in Louisiana v. Calais. They are mobilizing heavily to block a proposed federal slush fund, and they are demanding Congress reassert its war powers after a 50-47 Senate vote regarding the conflict with Iran.
It is such a fascinating contrast. The public's attention almost exclusively tracked the grand ideological battles in Washington, D.C., but as we've seen today, the reality is that the vast majority of new law, the specific rules that will actually dictate how you live your life, how you operate your business, and how you buy your groceries, got written in the states.
Exactly. The national broadcast naturally focuses on the big federal clashes, while the state capitals quietly go about rewriting the rules of daily life.
A few numbers to land with from this week.
165 years.
That's how long Rhode Island's ratification of the Corwin Amendment has sat on the state's books until this week's repeal hearing.
83-14.
That's the Louisiana House vote on Senate Bill 254, the debit card surcharge ban now heading to Governor Jeff Landry. The Senate passed it 36-0.
61 sponsors.
That is the number backing Illinois' Menopause Equity and Care Act, Illinois House Bill 52284, which just cleared the legislature.
A surcharge line on a receipt, an as-is clause on a used car, a coverage exclusion and an insurance plan, and a sentence about slavery that sat untouched for 165 years this week. The laboratories of democracy went line by line through the fine print.
For the full text, status, and plain English breakdown of any bill we mentioned today, head to amendment.app. Thanks for listening to The 10th. We'll see you next Sunday.